Welcome back to Bulletproof Mindset, your go-to podcast for health, fitness and entertainment. I am your host, Dale Crossar, and today we are talking about the fountain of youth, the only thing that can guarantee you to stop you aging, reversing your biological age. And you can probably guess what that is, but we'll leave that as a little teaser before we get into the episode. Speaking of the episode, before we do, one of the best ways you can support the show is by leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify. I would love it if you can do that. If you don't have Spotify, head over to YouTube. Consider leaving a comment below this video. What did you think of today's episode? I'd love to hear your feedback. And you can always follow me on Instagram. If you follow me at Coach Crossar, follow the joint podcast page there. I'm still stuck in my old ways. Follow the podcast page at Bulletproof Mindset __. And without further ado, enjoy today's banger of an episode. If you listen till the end, I've got a wee teaser on what's coming up. So enjoy, and I'll speak to you soon. There is one fate that we all cannot escape, and that is the whole process of getting older and aging. There's one thing we can do to dramatically slow that process down and increase the quality of life that we have, and it's a simple thing called resistance training. If you're a long-term listener, you know I bang on about this all the time, but I wanted to do a bit more of a deep dive into this because the comments that I'm hearing, particularly recently with some older, not even clientele, just kind of older people that are in my life is, oh no, that's just part and parcel of getting older. Wait till you're my age and all this shit excuses, if I'm being honest. Now, in fairness, there's one part of this conversation that the older population growing up, in fairness to them, the gym was for the bodybuilders. The gym were for the gymnastics. It was for sporty type people. And if you didn't have an interest in that, then what would be the reason to go to that? For me growing up, and for me choosing this as my profession, gaining all the knowledge that I have on the impact that resistance training can do in our day-to-day lives, it becomes no question whatsoever as to why every single week for the rest of my life, I'll be showing up and creating and doing some sort of resistance training protocol. So in today's episode, you might be thinking, how can lifting weights make me younger? Well, if you stick with me, we're going to dive into that together, break it down, keep it simple, and even look at some of the science behind it in more recent years as we're gaining more information. Resistance training at its foundations is anything that gives us resistance. So for some people, it's going to be body weight. For others, it's going to be weights in the gym, cables, barbells, dumbbells. Anything that creates resistance in a movement pattern that we choose to do. Now, I guess the whole thought process behind lifting, helping you stay young or stay strong, feel younger and live longer, is there a way to train directly for that? I believe so, but this is where the fitness world and what is the best routine to do can sometimes be a bit messy. So we're going to break through that as well and kind of communicate what things to focus on if that is your goal. Because all of us are I would imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you might be interested in fitness in some form or manner. It might be a high rocks that you're training for. It might be a marathon. It might be just to get shredded, or it might just be to get stronger, do a competition, or just feel better in yourself. But ultimately all those goals, well, majority of those goals can have end dates. So getting in shape for the 12 weeks, it has an end date. Doing the High Rocks event has an end date. And if there's no belief bought into why you lift weights in the first place, then ultimately you find yourself being very good when you sign up to an event and then being really crap when that event's over. And it's the whole goal setting side of things. But we got an episode coming up with that. So I'm excited to release that in the next week or so. But putting that to the side, let's dive into what actually happens to our bodies as we age. Now, I used to think that when you were in your mid-20s, you were old as fuck. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I was like, when you're in your 30s, man, that's old. And as I approach each of these milestones in my own life, I'm thinking to myself, I don't feel old at all. I still feel young. And especially turning 30, and more so turning 31. 31 was a bit of it wasn't a bad age to turn, but it through, I guess, societal pressures, it just felt shit. It's a shit age. It felt like a shit age. It's like, man, I'm 31. I've had 31 years on this planet. And I start thinking, wow, that's been 13 years since I left high school. And it's like, oh shit, I am an adult now. And I forget, and there's a whole mentality side to this conversation, but just sticking to the physical aspects of getting older, I forget how old I am sometimes. I think I said I was 32 in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Jill had to remind me that I wasn't. So that isn't based off feeling. But basically, I've got, 10 plus years, in fact, probably longer, of consistently working out in a gym setting at home, using bands, using some form of resistance training. And I'm so grateful that I've been in it for this long, because I can physically see it compound. Now, if I had to go back to my late teens, early 20s, when I started this, it was all based purely on attention and wanting to be bigger. I couldn't care less about increasing my quality of life, because your quality of life is higher. You get away with more. You get to stay up, and maybe a wee bit tired the next day, but you can push through it. The hangovers don't hit as much. You just feel like that younger self is just almost as if like you're feeling unstoppable. Now, sadly, in today's world, the way that society's going, the way that the UK civilization and what we do in day-to-day life, we're actually seeing teens and kind of those in their 20s have a really, really poor quality of life. Obviously, stats are highlighting that obesity is on the rise, and although we have more information on what to do to stay fitter, stay younger, or whatever you want to classify this as, people aren't doing it, and we are getting unhealthier as the years go on. And more importantly, we're getting weaker. I think that's a conversation that we need to address. And we're getting weaker because people aren't creating resistance in their day-to-day life. Now, there was a time where maybe just over 20, 30 years ago, tech wasn't exactly a big thing. Even if you look at office jobs and what that looked like 20, 30 years ago, people still had to get up and go about and move. But with technology, it's kind of kept us more sedentary. We don't have to get out and about. And the whole sort of uproar of working from home has made it even I would say argue worse, because you don't need to get up and travel to the office and walk about a bigger building. You're stuck to your little shell of a house. So if you just go about your day-to-day life and you live to the standards of what goes on in the UK, you can guarantee that your lifestyle will start to decrease as you age. Pretty rapidly, I would say as well. There's an interesting stat here that those teens from the ages of 16 to 19, have a weaker grip strength on the dynamometer than those who were over the age of 60 in the 1960s. And they're comparing this by how heavy, not a shopping bag, but it's like a weighted briefcase that it looks like they're comparing to what guys done back in the day. And another part of that is construction jobs and more laborious, intense jobs. They've all been kind of shifted to factory works and machines and all that sort of stuff. So there's a massive, massive shift with the great thing, or I guess this age of technology. On one hand, it's created more opportunities for us to learn. It's created more opportunities for us to live, because we can, like, having this device. I seen something today. It's like, it was a picture of the Empire State, and someone took a picture in the 1960s, and it was like, my granddad took this picture in the 1960s with his professional camera, and it was fast forward to today, and it's like, I took this picture on my phone. Just that alone blows my mind. And that's only been, that's been as me growing up as a teen, going from Blackberries to iPhones to where we are now. It's crazy. And this is such a powerful device. This is a computer in our pockets. So that technology is definitely one of the reasons that we are getting weaker as humans, and it's actually making us age more. And I would say it's making us age more if we don't implement resistance training, because that's what the point of this conversation is about. This is the point of this episode, that whether you see the gym for bodybuilders, or you see the gym as this obnoxious or place where people go just to look a certain way, it's far from the truth. And there's much more layers to what that gym can do for you, or what resistance training can do for you. Now, do I see the rise of gyms happening over the next couple of years? I think so. I mean, I'd like to hope so. There isn't, albeit you could probably think of 5 different gyms in your local town, there's still not enough gyms to serve the population of each council, for example. And that to me is like, wow, there's so many people. So I'm in the fitness world, I go to the gyms, so I see the top 2% of the population who choose the resistance training. And even in that population, there's still work to be done on what you choose to do as your resistance. Because in a way, when you're younger, going out and playing and running about, it does become resistance. It does become exercise, I guess, if we classify that as. But exercising and lifting weights, they fall under the same category, but exercising can be classed as playing five-a-side with your pals. I would say resistance training has to have a part to play on everything that you do, and it can't be replaced with these activities like spin, HIIT classes. So it's almost its own functional, or its own foundational pillar, should I say. So what happens when we get older? What happens to our bodies? Well, with the basics, as we age, our body naturally starts to lose muscle. From the age of 30, this starts to happen. Now, it happens earlier, I would argue. So I think this was pulled from 2018, okay? And from the age of 30, your body can start to lose anywhere from 3 to 8% of your muscle mass per decade. And by the time you're 60, that starts to double and sometimes triple, depending on the lifestyle that person's living. So in other words, this kind of process is called sarcopenia. You might have heard this before. But the breakdown of muscle tissue, I don't know why. Again, it might be just the whole Instagram life. We just assume that muscle is there to be looked at. It looks sexy. It's an attractive trait on someone, but it's more functional than aesthetic. Muscle is the only thing that promotes higher metabolism. It strengthens our tendons, it strengthens our joints, it strengthens our body. It gives us more energy. And it makes us fucking resilient to life. If you take someone who gets diagnosed with some sort of terminal illness and they end up bedbound for, let's just say, 3 months, right? I know that actually is really long, but let's just say it's a month. Person A and person B, if person A has 10 pounds more muscle than person B, their success rate of surviving that illness, and I know I said terminal illness, but their success rate of surviving that illness far outweighs the person who has less muscle mass, because your body starts to deteriorate quicker, starts to utilise fat, starts to take away more skeletal muscle, starts to then eat into your bones and all sorts. And sadly, there might be a few of you guys out there who've seen that, particularly in our grands and grandparents, because they're already frail, and that's why we're prone to more illnesses as we're older. And then we've got the conversation with falls, which is a whole separate story. So by the time, as I said, by the time you're 30, you start losing 3 to 8% of your muscle, and that ramps up as you approach 60. And as I said, this was a study done in 2018, okay? Now, I would argue that 6 years on from that we're saying by the time you hit 30, we're seeing it even earlier now. We're seeing people in their mid to late 20s. I remember when I started working out, there wasn't much difference between me and my peers. So in age of 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 was when I started noticing it, of those who consistently worked out and those who didn't. And it wasn't like there was a massive discrepancy. It was just, like I've got a wee bit of chronic pain in my lower back, or I've got a wee niggle here in my hip. And I remember thinking, I was like, and already? You're fucking 22-year-old, bro. Like, what is going on? And knowing what I know now, thinking back to that is a cause of your body getting weaker. And this is what I kind of wrote down here. Without doing anything about it, you will get weaker over time, which can lead to slower movements, less energy, and even things like falls and fractures. You become more frail as a human being. Now, the likelihood of that happening as someone in their 20s compared to someone in their 30s is obviously a little bit different, and even more. If you usually think of someone being frail, that's usually associated with being old. I've seen this in 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and I've got some good stories to share, some hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, because the good news is that lifting weights slows this process down. Resistance training can even stop this completely, and the data is very clear on this. Regular resistance training sessions can reduce your risk of age-related muscle loss by 1/3, which is crazy. 1/3 just by picking up weight or picking up some sort of resistance on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, you can start to reap those rewards with very minimal effort, I would argue. So how does resistance training keep you strong and resilient? What actually happens there? Well, simply the whole statement that I made that if you don't use it, you lose it. And when you lift weights, you're essentially telling your body that, hi, there's a signal here, and that deterioration of muscle that you're trying to do over there, we actually need those muscles. Can we not do that? And your body starts processing that. That's a simple way of putting it. Now, it's more complex than that. Like, is the right nutrition, is the right fuel there to help that energy process sustain that? There's a couple parts to this conversation. But essentially, it's forcing your body to repair and grow the muscle tissue as opposed to take it away and break it down. And it's not just about the muscles, it's also your bones too. So your bones get frailer as you age. Sarcopenia is one thing, but your kind of, your bone density will start to deteriorate in as early as 40 and above. And this data is very, very clear here that not even just by one study, multiple studies highlighting the importance that by resistance training on a regular basis puts stress on those bones, and with that stress it actually makes them stronger. And this is the whole head fuck when it comes to lifting weights. It's like, how can I add a stress to my body and my body gets stronger? Because surely if you're constantly stressing your body will break down and get weaker. But that's why you're trying to control the stress that you're getting. And that's why people lead to burnout, because they try and hammer it. And there's only so much that you can always be maxing out at until your body breaks down. And this is kind of highlighting this process here. So in that controlled environment, if we do resistance training, put stress on those bones, it will actually make them stronger. In fact, studies will kind of often show that resistance training increases bone density by 1 to 3% every year. So let's imagine a runway of a plane taking off. The longer the runway, the more chance the plane is going to get into the air. And that's essentially what you're doing here. The earlier you start this journey of consistently lifting weights, not being bought in for 8 weeks and bought out for the next 8 weeks, or yo-yo back and forth and giving 30% of your year to these fad diets or fad training methods, but by properly resistance training through compound movements inside the gym, then this will give you this longer runway that gives you a better chance of living a stronger, pain-free and quality life. Now, why do you want stronger bones? Well, simply, you'll not break something if you fall over. My mum's just had a fall and she's fell, and all she's done is put her wrist out, and it's highlighting like she's in her 50s and the frailness of her body. She broke her wrist through that fall. Now, would that happen to someone in their 30s because they're a little bit younger? Arguably not. But would it happen to someone in their 50s if they have years or a couple of years or even just a couple of months backed up with resistance training? Well, I guess we'll never really know, but one thing I know for sure is I'm not going to leave that up to fate. I'm not going to leave that up to pure chance. I'm going to give myself the best chance possible going into my later years or even the next 10 years to make sure that I'm not just looking my best, but feeling my best, feeling strong going into those years, reaping the rewards of what resistance training can offer us. Now, here's the biggest thing about this whole thing that is really a byproduct of building strength and building muscle. Now, I got into I was in a back and forth with someone on TikTok who said, no one's going to spend 2 hours in the gym though. This is a silly way, or no one's going to spend 2 hours in the gym. That's why these fat loss jabs will be successful. And I thought to myself, I was like, this is all about calories in or calories burned versus calories consumed. And this whole point that if you're lifting weights, you're sending a positive signal to increase your metabolism. You're building this better metabolic machine that is your body. And that allows you and gives you the benefits of burning more fuel, burning more calories without doing anything, because you have more tissue, you have more strength, your things are just working better. And with more energy, you then naturally want to do more. And sitting about and lying about, that was maybe once your life because you didn't have any energy, you're then promoted to wanting to go out and do stuff, do the things that you love, whether it's your activity, your sports, or friends, family, what, like you name it, the list is endless. So 7% in 2019, this study said that those who lifted weights burned 7% more calories at rest compared to those who only did cardio. Now, in recent years, on the last, this is 6 years ago, this study, and this is still early days of this, but I think we can draw conclusions to my own experience with myself and clients that I've worked with. Without introducing cardio, their bodies or body composition has started to change for the better without changing anything other than adding a few sessions in that promote the muscle building or promote the strength building. So we'll go into what is the best resistance training protocol in a little sec, but one other thing that we need to address is, why do we feel younger? Like, is getting older just down to a feeling? Well, we've just established that from a biological standpoint, we can reverse our aging by building more muscle, building more strength, which in return will reduce your niggles and your chronic pain. It'll give you more energy. It'll boost your energy. And from a metabolic standpoint, you can then consume more food without gaining any body fat. That really should be the main conversation and put to the side, and that should be simple enough. But the other thing is also the psychological part. Because all those things are increased, or all those things are improved, challenges in day-to-day life, like getting upstairs or taking, I don't know, maybe even just doing some household chores that household chores that you've been doing all your life, and then you maybe get to the age of 40 and you've tried to do some things, you're like, oh, my back's killing me. You can start to lose confidence. And very much like me, when I turned 31, just the whole thought of being 31 messed with my head, and I thought, fuck, I'm getting old. But we need to redefine what old is, because if it's just an age, then there's that other famous saying that you're only as old as you feel. And that's so true, because there's such a mental component to this. Obviously, anxiety and depression are more and more common around individuals, but again, this is dramatically reduced by 20 to 30% in older adults just by introducing resistance training into your life. Because as a byproduct of changing these biological things like building strength, adding muscle, you then go about your day-to-day life, you don't have as much chronic pain. You have a little bit more confidence because you've had these little micro adverse challenges in the gym or with resistance of, I don't know if I can do that much weight, or I can't do that exercise because my left knee hurts. You overcome these little challenges that you've created in a safe manner, and then you have more confidence going about. You have more confidence to do the things that you maybe some of your peers don't. It's like, you need to be careful out there, or be careful on that ice that you don't fall, or this and that. It's like, well, I'm confident in my ability that if I do, I'm going to be okay, or there's a better chance that I'm going to be okay. Now, we can't just be protected in bubble wrap. We need to make sure that we're being constantly pushed outside our comfort zone, because what is comfortable leads us to the use or not using some of these other things like certain movement patterns, which nicely leads on to what is the right protocol to do when it comes to resistance training. Then, if we truly want to feel younger and reverse a biological age as we start to age in general, or get older, should I say, what type of weightlifting should we do? Should we just do everything? Is there a secret plan to do? Well, harsh reality is, you need to kind of meet yourself where you're at. For a lot of people, it's going to be bodyweight exercises. For another group of people, it's going to be resistance bands. For some, it might be a crossover of both. And for many of you guys, it's going to be creating resistance training in the gym. So what is the secret resistance training protocol that will reduce your biological age? So even though if you're approaching 35, 40, 45, 50 and beyond, what's going to help you reduce that? Well, ultimately, you need to meet yourself where you're at, and this is where it can be very hard to communicate to the masses, and it's going to be the good old answer of, it depends. For some of you guys, it's going to be body weight. For others, it's going to be resistance bands. For many of you guys, it's going to be a mix of both, and including some compound lifts or some barbell and dumbbell and machine lifts inside the gym. It really depends on where you're at, but the most important thing is not being occasionally great, but being consistently good. So if you can constantly show up and being more consistent than getting so caught up and following the best exercises or the best program. That's really what separates those who win and those who don't, is those who have the ability to consistently show up regardless of the outcomes. Now, I'm saying that here, it's not as if I'm on my high horse that I've never missed training days. I often miss them, but I make sure that I've got a plan in place to see when that pendulum swings so far in one direction and I'm starting to build momentum of, man, I've missed another training day or I've not done that day. I make sure that I make a plan to get that training session in. Now, so let's talk about frequency first of all. How often should you go to the gym on a weekly basis? Well, multiple data from various different studies highlight that just 2 sessions per week under 30 minutes, you can see massive amounts of changes and improvements to your strength and overall health. Okay, so the baseline for this is set so freaking low. So you guys out there who train 4, 5, 6 days a week and you get disappointed in yourself for missing 2 days or missing a day's training, yet you've trained 4 or 5 days. Like, I love the higher standards that set for yourself, but doing anything out of guilt's never truly going to help. If there's a genuine reason as to why you missed that session, because there's an interview coming up and you want to apply for that job and that's going to make your overall health and lifestyle much better, then sacrifices need to be made. And as you go later down this, you can start to play about that routine. So when you have more time, then introduce 4 days a week. When you have less time, understand that 2 days a week can be good as well. So it's finding the balance of when you can switch it up and, more importantly, being able to adapt, but not being occasionally great, being consistently good is where you want to kind of move the needle in terms of what is the best approach to follow. Now, I could say what I think is the best program and the best bang for your buck in terms of programming that you can follow. And I could get 2 types of people. And this is just really to hit this point home. One person could follow that inconsistently. And another person could not follow that at all and download a very basic, crappier designed program. One that they've got off the back of Men's Health magazine. But they have the ability to follow that consistently. The one that wins isn't arguably the one that is designed better. It's the one that's been followed the best. So bear that in mind, okay? So just always think about that you're trying to work out where can you get consistency from. Now, you've got your days, you've got your frequency throughout the week that you're training. What type of lifts should you be doing? Well, if you're truly only focused on being able to function with a higher quality of life, then something that challenges each movement pattern is obviously better. This would be a squat, a hinge, a press, up above head, a pull down, a pull towards you, a press out in front of you, and then also introducing like single arm movements or single leg movements, which is referred to as unilateral, something that challenges that range of motion. Now, this isn't just being in this bilateral position, introducing exercises that get you out of there, bring you back in. And this is why when it comes to programming, it can be a little bit more complex than just chucking a bunch of random exercises together. But I would bet that if, rather than overcomplicating that, your big lifts like your squats, your deadlifts, your overhead press, your bench press, your rows, assisted pull-ups, that's a good starter for 10. And being strong in those movement patterns will easily put you ahead of your peers who don't. Easily. And that would be the same for those who constantly go out on their bike or constantly go to spin classes and HIIT classes, because you're doing it in a manner where you're wanting the reward, or you're communicating the signal of increasing strength, and with that is increasing or maintaining the muscle mass that you have. Now, I would say range of motion and form is probably the best place to start. So working on controlling the weight and controlling it on the eccentric part or the lowering part of the exercise. That is simply it. Now, I could do a whole episode on the best bit to programming, but again, I'm always foreshadowing future episodes, so that will be one to come. But I just want you to start thinking about, right, okay, what am I working out for just now? Now, if you've got a goal where you're working up to a summer holiday, a wedding, where you maybe want to be a wee bit leaner, the plan should still be the same with the compound lifts. There's maybe a bit more that you have to play into, but if you truly just want to feel better, but if you truly just want to reap the rewards of everything that we've spoken about so far, then your compound list is going to be where it's at. And it can be with a barbell, it can be with a dumbbell, and even some of these can be with a resistance band and body weight, because your history of your training protocol is very new. And if you're new to this, even better. You don't have to spend as long on some of these lifts, and you don't need much resistance to start. So what is some of the real life success stories? I have a couple I want to highlight. The first one was a postman, right? I got a postman who just came into the gym and was looking for a trainer. And this was early on in my career. We only ended up working together for 11 weeks. And this man was 77. And he was one of the first postmen in his area, and he never had a driving license, so he walked everywhere. So as the world evolved and postmen had to travel and all this sort of stuff, he managed to be at the root of the OG postman that just walked on a day-to-day basis. And then he told me he was doing something like 22,000 steps every day. And he came to me and he's like, look, I feel a bit lost, I'm retired, but I want to keep my fitness up because I've always been relatively fit. Now, his fitness was the same repetitive motion. He never really lifted weights before. So he had very common issues, like his hips were a wee bit tight, his knees were a wee bit sore, his posture was rough forward. So when we done his movement assessment, we had all these things that when we were trying to move through range of motion, little niggles and pains were coming out. However, for someone who was 77, looked pretty good. And when I say looked pretty good, he looked healthy, he looked strong, he looked fit. There was just maybe elements where you could tell that age was starting to take over because there was those same repetitive patterns. So anyway, we started working together. We worked on deadlifting. It took us like 6 weeks to get a hinge, 6 weeks to get the bum to move back and being able to pick weight up correctly. And I'll never forget him saying to me that he had this, like, on his left lower back. He used to say that every time he tries to go to sleep at night, he gets this really shooting pain. And I don't know if it's sciatica or it was just like, I don't know, just something breaking down in terms of the muscles that were supporting that area of his back. So I was always a big believer, squatting, deadlifting, like we'll start there and we'll look at other movement patterns. So deadlifting was one we focused on. His squat, surprisingly, was pretty good. We'd done backwards sled drives, but ultimately we were training with the resistance for the first time in his life at the age of 77. Now, he'd been in and out of the gym over the years, but never really committed to a program or committed to it. He just went to the gym now and then, and the chronic pain that he felt in his lower back every single night for, I can't remember how long he told us, but a good number of years. I remember him coming into the gym one week or the following week after, I think we're, as I said, maybe 6 weeks in at this point, and him saying to me, do you know, I'm not feeling that pain in my lower back anymore. And I'm a kind of new to the game at this point, but years of understanding the strength training aspect of building a stronger body. And I just drew the conclusion. I was like, yeah, I expect that as your body gets stronger, it should support those areas. And the buzz and delight on his face of, fuck, that's really good, because then that's a knock-on effect of him getting to sleep better. And we all know sleep's one of the most important, if you talk about fountain of youths, resistance training one part, another part is obviously nutrition, and then another big part is going to be sleep. So that's helped improve his sleep. Again, when it came to his knee pain, doing exercises like backward sled drive and getting full range of motion in his knees, because 77 years, being in the post office at the age of 16, 17, up till the age of 77, his knees had never fully contracted other than getting out of bed or standing up off the couch. So creating resistance in that form, again, started to reduce the feeling or to reduce the pain out of 10 on his knees. These were all fantastic rewards that he was starting to reap in the space of 6 weeks at that age. Now, in our story, I had a client in our 50s who fell on the side of being morbidly obese and very conscious of trying to lose weight and yo-yoing and going back and forth, trying all these HIIT classes. And we've seen the content that was posting around getting stronger and living a kind of pain-free life. She was riddled with chronic pain from the back of her neck, shoulders, hips, lower back, knees, ankles. But one thing that she mentioned to me was her toes, right? Stick with me with this, because I actually think this is quite a cool story. Now, toes was, I think she'd broke it at one point, and a doctor told us that nerve endings or whatever had happened in that toe, she'd never really be able to get full function on that toe. So you can imagine that when we are training, again, another exercise was like, how do we squat? Starting with a high box squat, a TRX squat, single leg stuff. When we tried to move that toe, like she found she was really off balance because she had no control over the big toe or the thumb toe and the first three toes, like at the top of your foot, right? And we introduced calf raises, and this wasn't to train her calves, this was to train the joint, to get the foot to move, because again, day-to-day life, wearing these big spongy Skechers shoes, plodding, like literally not moving that ankle whatsoever, and doing that for 20 plus years. It's no wonder that when that ankle's then challenged outside its normal range of motion, there's a shoot of pain. There's a reaction to the body of going, whoa, you're not in control. We don't need these muscles. We've kind of reduced the need for the muscle in that area. So take it easy or you're going to hurt yourself. And what ended up happening was she hurt herself. So anyway, we start training together. I think we trained for like a good 4 months. But about 2 months in, as I said, we introduced calf raises and a number of other exercises. And as we're working out, she's coming to me and she's like, I've got way more energy than I've ever had before. I was like, well, that's kind of not a byproduct of getting stronger. It's a good sign. And we're not talking about nutrition. We're not talking about losing fat. We're not talking about anything other than here's a couple of lifts inside the gym I want us to really try and practice and get better at. So anyway, we do this, and we start doing our calf raises. And every time we do calf raises, she mentions like it's really hard to get right up in the balls of my feet because I can't control that toe. And one day she came into the gym, she runs up to me, she's like, you'll never believe this. She's like, look, she took her shoe off and she starts wiggling her big toe. She's like, I've not been able to move that toe for I think she said 10 years, 11 years or something like that. And I thought, how mental that being able to move your toe can give someone so much joy. And this is where I started to double down on maybe communicating a better message. Not a better message, just communicating a different message around what resistance training can do for you. And these are just two of many stories that I've got with clientele. Now you'll notice from me, like, it's not that I don't want to do it, I just don't think it's part of the game or part of the message I want to put out there when it comes to transformation photos. Look, they're a great marketing tool, but I don't want people coming to me for fat loss. I don't want people coming to me for this amazing transformation. I truly want people to come from me and learn this different side to lifting weights and the power that it can do to improve your quality of life. And don't get me wrong, I have a ton of people who still come to me because they want to look a certain way. But what I'm doing in that process is, as we pursue that, we've got all these other metrics and wins that we're having, from strength wins to full range of motion on their squats to, well, I never thought I'd be able to move that much weight. And it starts to shift the perspective on, you know what, I will look better, but looking better isn't the only goal, because I'm going to put some of these other metrics around it where I'm going to be committed to this, not just for 12 weeks, not for 16 weeks, not for 6 months, not until the holiday, not until the wedding, but for life. And that commitment to life is going to look more consistent some weeks than other weeks. But one thing I can bet, or one thing I hope that every single client who does work with me takes away, is the whole commitment to the need to be doing some form of resistance training. So in that note, I'll wrap it up. Hopefully that is a good message that I've put across there. It's not just about getting ripped. It's about staying strong, healthy, and more independent as you age. This is another thing I never really touched on here, but you can imagine what life would look like having to rely on other people to do stuff for you. Now, for some of you guys, that sounds great. It's like, yeah, that'd be great if somebody could run about after me. But simple things that not going and doing your own shopping, those can be some of the biggest differences or be one of the biggest starting points that you start to see the reduction in your quality of life. Now, I'm not saying don't do these things, but if you're going to do them, it highlights the importance as to why you want to add resistance training into your life, because more and more of these technology is only going to get better. Self-driving cars are just round the corner, where we won't even need to move our body to do certain things. The way the workplace is going, if you work behind a laptop or a computer, the whole VR and visualization of you talk out loud, you're not going to need to use your arms to type on the desktop anymore, type on the keyboard. It's going to get really weird and really wild. So whether you're 30 or whether you're 70, just know it's never too late to start resistance training and start fighting back against aging. So with that, thank you for tuning in. I will see you guys on the next one. I have an exciting, fuck it, I'll just tell you what it is because it's out tomorrow and it'll kick off on Saturday. We're going to do 12 days of podcasting on the lead up to Christmas, where you can expect an episode every single day. And what I'm going to do with each episode is have a theme of, as you start to move into 2025, how to make this your strongest and fittest year to live a stronger and healthier life. So you can expect that from me. As always, if you enjoy these podcasts, look, I'm a one-man band here. Of course, my lovely wife Jillian helps me out. My brother helps me out with some of the content design. But if you want to show some love and appreciation at this time of year, then consider leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at Coach Crossar. And until next time, have a wonderful day.